Chapter 10 is looking at culture and strategy, which is an important slide or presentation for the coming assignment 3. So, connection or relationship between culture and strategy, to which extent they are linked to each other. We are going to talk about the importance of strategy, define culture, look at ways of identifying culture or classifying culture, importance of cultural thrust. We'll see what is cultural thrust. The relationship between culture and strategy. We'll talk about the relationship between, how culture is a competitive advantage or considered as a competitive advantage. We will look at cultural analysis, levels of cultural analysis. Also, we'll discuss or talk about the alignment of business strategy and culture, to which extent they go along with each other. And finally, we'll look at assessing the importance of culture. To start with is importance of culture. Is culture important? Yes, it is important to any organization. It's rational and logical. It should be easy to comprehend, easy to implement, easy to use in the organization, and also easy to talk about. When you have a part to discuss or think of, it can be easy to present or talk about. Without a clear strategy, a company is lost. This is clear, I think. If you don't have a clear plan to follow, to work according, then the company is lost. Second one, we will look at culture is human. What do we mean by that? We have several points here. To talk about. Culture is focusing on corporate culture is focusing on system of shared values. It's not a matter of how strategy is good, but culture. Let me give you a brief of this, or detailed, but instead of reading them, let me just talk about it. We should know that culture is a system of shared values, assumptions, beliefs, norms that connect or bond members of the organization together. They have to work with each other according to those shared values, assumptions, beliefs, and norms. Corporate culture is emotional part. What do you mean by that? Which means different things to different people. What I feel in this department is very crucial for me as an organization. Maybe other people in the other department within the same organization, they don't think of it as that much important. So culture can be variable, changing, depends on how do you understand that and how do you use it. Culture is variable, which means culture is changeable. Culture is changeable, which means not protected, because it depends on the mood of people and how they express it. So culture is a very dangerous part. So if you want to put your strategy, think of a culture, building or having a strong base as a culture for your organization. It is powerful factor for any company or for any company's long-term success, no matter how good your strategy is, because people always make the difference. If you have a very strong strategy, but the culture of the organization is not supporting. And what is a culture? The people who are doing that, how they are linked to each other, how they are working in that organization. So if you don't have that strong base, so it might lead to a disaster, even if you have a very strong strategy. The last point is important. Any strategy imposed or executed by leaders, they mix it with the practices and attitude of the organizational culture. So imposed means executed by leaders. They should mix it with the practices and attitude of culture. They cannot work without. So if leaders misunderstand how much strategy effectiveness depends on cultural alignment, then they are losers. They might lose. So we said the last point, which is in red, we said, but sometimes those leaders misunderstand or misestimate or underestimate how much the strategy effectiveness depends on the cultural alignment. So always culture and strategy are moving in the same line. They are moving together. They cannot work without each other. So up to here we started to get ideas on the link between culture and strategy. Ways of identifying culture. There are important ways to identify culture. They are focusing here on 3 important. If you want to know the culture of the organization, look how decisions are made. Number 1. Number 2, look at the methods and style of communication in the organization. Number 3, how customers are treated. How customers are treated. Because from these all, because those practices and behavior affects the organizational culture. Sometimes when you go to a place, you admire the atmosphere there. You might say, Allah, if I work here, I feel this place is comfortable. All the people are supporting. All those people are helpful. If you want something, they will finish it for you. This is the main thing they have it. The base in the organization, being supportive, collaborative, helping each other. They create this kind of atmosphere. This is the culture. Mixing all those 3 points together. Yes. Okay, let us move to the second one, the importance of cultural thrust. What do you mean by cultural thrust? Cultural direction, we can say cultural drive. Can be cultural direction. To which extent the cultural direction is important, to which extent the cultural drive is important. Look at those 2-3 lines, but it gives a big or a deep meaning. If the organization doesn't have the right cultural direction, then all its internal activities might be directed to focus on transforming it into huge web of unjustified appendixes. Which means that any organization should changing in its internal activities, which are directed by the cultural attraction, and if they don't have that cultural attraction, then it will become to like a huge web of unlinked practices and link extra practices just to finish the thing. Unlinked, this is important. Unlinked extra practices which are uncertain. Those practices are uncertain, not clear in most cases, In this case, what will happen? The organization does not have a strong base to depend on. So if you don't have the right cultural thrust, which support the internal activities, then you might be under a big problem. Then it may be steered. It might move to have a collection of only just practices linked to each other to finish a thing or to finish an activity, but those practices or things are uncertain. They are not clear in most cases. In this case, you won't be able to achieve your objectives, because cultural thrust is the main thing for internal activities. Why? Again, people who are doing that, they should be in that part of that cultural thing. If you are as management, didn't put this point in your planning, in your strategies, then you might be under or in a real or serious problem. I got this citation for you. This is slide number 7. I just got this citation for you to show that the cultural thrust is the glue is the glue. If you know what is a glue, it's the glue that directs or connects the organization practices to each other. So cultural thrust is one of the important things. Cultural direction, we said cultural drive is the most important thing. If you don't have it, you won't be able to achieve your objectives, even if you have strong strategies, as we said earlier. Now, let us go to this diagram. Interactivity of culture and strategy. If you notice, we talked about this one in the assignment today. When I released the assignment, there is a question focusing on the interactivity of culture and strategy. By looking at this diagram, look how they are related to each other. Let me just explain it to you in an easy way. Let me say, this diagram is showing the extent or limit of connections or interaction between culture and strategy. Yes, the limit of interaction between culture and strategy. Again, this diagram shows how cultural thrust, which is culture direction, impacting or affecting strategy of the organization. The culture always depends on people and how they direct the organization. Cultural thrust impact on strategy. So the culture always depending on the organization, depending on people who are driving or directing the organization. Therefore, you can see around 5 options, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, designed from highest to lowest, from up to down. We'll go and look. The highest level, optimal action. The highest level, which means optimal. The optimal action, interaction, which shows what? A strong harmony between culture and structure. When there is a very strong relationship between culture, you will find outcome will be perfect. Why? Because there is a good harmony between culture and structure. Number 2, the second option is good action. Good action, which is what? Considered as good interaction between both of them, between culture and strategy. Represent high performance and good interaction in the organization. That means still you have a good percentage of cultural background, of cultural base in the organization. Therefore, you come out with good action. Average action. If there is a kind of gap, slight gap between the requirements of a strategy and culture, then the problems or the gaps might appear, but still it's not that strong. So there is a chance for organization or the management level to work on that and avoid the gap, to move it to the second level. And number 4, which is what? Poor action. Poor action means what? Almost no action, as the culture of the organization is not supporting, or even if the not supporting even if the strategy is strong. That means I have a very strong strategy, I know my ability, I know so and so and so, but I didn't work on building that cultural background in the organization. Like what? Good relationship, having good values, having good norms in the organization, being a model for my employees, there is a kind of transparency. All these are not there. So then the implementation of the strategy will be poor, as that cultural background is not there. No one is going to support. Each employee is in his world. Okay, and the last one is saying inaction. Inaction refers to the loose connection, which means almost no connection between strategy and culture, where people in the organization are not supporting at all. I have the money, I have the good strategy, I brought the expert people to put the strategy, but I didn't work on building the base, the culture in that organization. I might give some rules and regulations to follow, but I'm not there to build it in my organization, to make it as a habit, as a practice in those people. Okay, Is it clear? Is it clear? Therefore, we say if you want your strategy to be successful, put culture part of your strategy at the planning stage. Make it part of your strategy at the planning stage. Build good culture among your employees. What do we mean by culture? It's the part which deals with the emotions of the employees, sharing the values, beliefs, norms, rules which require to be the same for all employees, even if they come from different nationalities. To succeed, start with yourself as a manager, as the boss, or hire people, a person implementing that strategy. Be a role model for your employees. This is the way you start building a good culture in the organization. I hope it's clear. If not, anything related to this part in your assignment, just come and ask. We will discuss it together. Now, we'll look at the relationship between culture and strategy. It's full, 2 pages. Let us see. Number 1, strategy drives the focus and direction. I put the strategy to know how to move in my plan. But culture is the emotional, organic habitat. It's the place where you implement. So we need it to grow and live, not die. It will help the strategy to live or die, because depends on how the culture is built in that organization. Strategy is only the headline for company's story. You are following certain instructions, but the culture needs clearly understanding of common language to embrace and tell. Common language to hold. Yes, we can say to hold or hug what you include in the organization: mission, vision, values, and clear expectation. Strategy is about intent and ingenuity, which means it's about commitment and setting up, or skilled, or creativity, how to be creative and think. But culture also is focusing and measuring what? The desire, the engagement, the execution, how you will implement the strategy. How implementation way is much more important than having the lines. We said when you have a strategy, written strategy, we cannot say good or bad unless you implement it. So implementation shows how good is the strategy. Maybe as words they are so strong, but implementation, something wrong with the implementation, that means there is something wrong in the cultural background. Fix that problem. And the last one, the blue line, says what? Strategy lay down the rules for playing the game, but culture fuels the spirit for how the game will be played. We said it. Culture, clarifying the picture through rules. Culture fuels the spirit for how the game is played, based on the relationship of employees and the extent of implementing the rules, values in the right way. I think up to here is that. Let us continue between the relationship between culture and strategy. Strategy is imperative for differentiation. Strategy is vital or looking for differentiation. Okay, but vibrant culture delivers the strategic advantage. But the active culture, if the culture is life in that organization, it will help or lead to strategic advantage. Culture is built or eroded every day. That means what? The culture is not stable. That means the culture is not stable. A lot of things are entering: practices, habit, behavior, attitude, so and so and so and so, even if regulations are there. But this depends also on you as a boss. How you climb, they give you example, how you climb the hill, and whether it's painful, fun, positive, or negative defines the journey. So I have my strategy, but how going to be implemented, the atmosphere, the culture in that organization will help and support how this strategy is going to be implemented. When culture embraces strategy, execution is scalable. That means what? When culture is well connected to strategy, this is the idea. When culture is well connected to strategy, Execution means implementation will be improving, will scalable means can be improved. Again, when culture is well connected to strategy, the execution or the implementation of that strategy can be improved, can be repeatable, can be sustainable. Okay, culture is a clear competitive advantage. This is clear. I said it on top, first one here. Culture must be mentioned to understand the health and engagement of an organization. That means the culture need to monitor to understand. We need to see how culture is moving in that organization, how culture is checked, how culture is followed to understand the health and engagement of an organization. Sometimes you can see from the first entrance to that place, you see. Sometimes you go to a department of, I don't know, ask so-and-so. So-and-so is not here today. Ask Fulan and Fulan. When you go to Fulan, I am not working on that. That means what? Everyone is depending on that one. This is a part of culture. So imagine if you need something from such people when it's going to finish. This is also part of a culture. Part of a culture. So the coming slide is about, let me see, culture. Yes, okay. The coming slide is about culture, a sustainable competitive advantage. We said in the previous one, we were saying the relationship. We said culture can be a competitive advantage. Okay, but when you can leverage consistently different differentiator that can duplicate its company strategy. If you have all the positive background for the organization as a company's culture, then you can be one of the good it will give you a chance for a competitive advantage. The culture is unique for a particular organization. Don't say I like the practices in this organization. باخذ نفسه I will implement in my organization. You cannot. Why? Because culture always depend on people. If you want to have good culture, you cannot imitate others' culture. This you need to shape the company's brand identity, improve employees' retention, inspire, motivate the working people in the organization. So you need to work on those elements, make sure they are strong enough, then we can say you are capable of competitive advantage. Even if you have negative practices, this is that culture. This is unique for your organization. And the third one is saying a healthy company culture provides. If you have a good company culture or a good culture in the organization, it provides what? If you have a good culture, it means that an environment that supports. If you have a good culture, that means the working environment will support stronger recruiting, retention, increase customer intimacy or intimacy, loyalty, greater productivity. All those positive things or actions from people, customer, employees, stakeholders will be good, especially when you have a healthy company culture. Okay, if you have it, that means intimacy means intimacy means that you are caring or familiarizing your people in the organization. Then this way you will gain loyalty. This is the idea. So a strong culture also direct impact the bottom line. If you have a strong culture in your organization, it will impact, it will affect the bottom line of the organization. What do you mean by bottom line? All the employees in the organization. If these are positive, 1, 2, 3, if those are positive, this is because of good established culture. Then expect a good competitive advantage for yourself in the market. Expect a good competitive advantage wherever you go. Expect a very unique organizational practices, and you can be a model for other organization. If you have this healthy company culture, you will have all those elements underneath or positive practices to improve, to upgrade your organization. And the final thing I can say in those 3 points, all those positive practices are product of a healthy culture. All those 3 practices are a product of a healthy culture. Number 12, slide number 12, cultural analysis. Focuses on identification of key components, cultural and ascertainment of alignment and alignment. Okay, we can say here, cultural analysis always focusing on identifying the main components or main parts of the culture. This is one thing. And the alignment or placement, if they or the alignment or placement of them with the strategic main focus, if there is a kind of alignment between culture and strategic main focus, other strategies, policies, and other development of business essential or imperative will lead to development of imperative things, will lead to a development of essential practices of the organization. Therefore, we say cultural analysis is important to highlight this kind of alignment. Cultural analysis is important to highlight this kind of alignment. What kind of alignment? A good connection between culture and strategy. Therefore, we need a kind of cultural analysis to see the background of that organization, to see to which extent people in that organization are supported. 2 levels of cultural analysis. When I do a cultural analysis, I need to focus on 2 things. Cultural analysis consists of what each organization has as its own culture, and what organization has as its own culture. This is slide 13, yes, has as its own culture. Number 2, what is there? Also, to which extent this analysis expresses or presents the cultural of that organization. So when you are looking or analyzing the cultural elements of any organization, focus on cultural elements. What makes that culture? What makes that culture? People, their mood, their attitude, their action, their emotions, their norms, their beliefs and values. Make sure you know these things of your employee. The other level of cultural analysis, also cultural expansion. Based on that one, I can know to which extent we can expand, or we can present, or we can improve. The alignment between business strategy with corporate culture. The alignment between business strategy and corporate culture. Look at the ones written in red. To ensure would facilitate. This means what? This is slide number 14. The main goal of this alignment, or this kind of alignment of strategy with corporate culture, is to confirm that the active components of a culture in any organization will facilitate, will simplify, will enable the smooth operation for the established strategies. Yes. So if there is good alignment between culture and corporate strategy, between strategy and corporate culture, this will confirm that the active components of a culture in any organization, if those components of a culture are very active, this will facilitate, this will enable the operation for the establishment strategy, to establish a good strategy. That means good strategy depends on cultural background. If you have good alignment between culture, corporate culture will confirm a good use of strategy. 15. Assessing the importance of culture. Assessing the importance of culture. What can we say here? If you want to assess or evaluate the importance of culture, we have 3 points to focus on. Sometimes major changes in any organization fail. Why it fail or why it fails? Why? Because there is no focus on the culture. I have a very strong strategy, but I don't have the base, the main thing in my culture. So they don't focus on culture, or not addressed properly, or the culture is there but it's weak, not addressed. If you remember the 5 options, it might be poor strategy. Why? Because they didn't focus on the culture. The other point, it's not sure or not clear if any new leader can change a well-built culture. If I have a good organization with good cultural background and the leader changed one day, and he comes with something that he will take time to change, we cannot say if he has the ability to change that cultural background. Sometimes you have the executive director or the CEO of one of those nations, one of those cultural background, where he's not a Muslim, he's not Arabic, but he has good personality, good. Can he change the culture of not eating in Ramadan, for example? For eating in Ramadan? He will say, I will allow you as Muslims. If you don't want, you can eat. You won't change. He cannot change those things we built in our organization, society. Or if you don't think like that, this is the idea. Some people come, they are good, but it's not sure they can change some of a well-built culture. Finally, there is no ideal culture to follow. Any used culture can be effective, and this depends on the people in the organization. I can't say I will follow the culture that CBFS is following. I liked it, I will follow it. I can't say that. I can't say UBI, because there is no ideal culture, and each culture depends on the effectiveness of the culture depends on the people who are working there. So when we say culture, think of people, think of members, think of how to improve your relationship with those people, think how to create a good base or a good kind of relationship with those people. Try to be to their side as management level. Try to encourage, try to recruit, try to retain good people, try to support, try to reward, try to recognize. So this way you are building positive attitude towards the work. This way you are building a good culture or a good cultural background in the organization. And I wrote this conclusion for you, as this is not a new thing. You can follow it and see it. We mentioned that earlier. If you have a written strategy, it doesn't show that your strategy is good. Strategy means translation into reality. Means what? Implementing it and see if that it goes well. That means your strategy is effective. Again, what supports that strategy is the cultural background. We need a kind of organizational alignment, as they said here. And one of the key important thing of successful strategy is implementation. What is that? The alignment of strategy with other things in the organization, like cultural, like structural, like ethical values. All those combined together to make the strategy successful. That's all for today. And if you have anything, as usual, just write it in the group and then we will discuss it. All the best.